an enzyme. And so enzymes or proteins are all twisted around in funny shapes. And the shape depends on how hot it is, how many salts are dissolved in it, and especially what the pH is, whether it's acid or base. So in one position, when it's mostly acid, the protein be coiled like that. As the carbon dioxide is used up and gets basic, it changes shape. And when it changes shape, it assumes a shape that can digest starch and break big long chains of starch down into separate sugar molecules. And so as this enzyme breaks starch down into sugar, the sugar molecules begin to fill up the cell and raise the osmotic pressure. So one big starch molecule has a lot less osmotic pressure, does a lot smaller job of blocking the exit holes than lots of smaller but still big sugar molecules. So changing starch into sugar raises the osmotic pressure. And so as the osmotic pressure is raised, well, the cell wall stretches, that'd be Turner pressure, but the cell walls are unequal in thickness. And so they're just thick where they touch each other. And so as a result, as the cells begin to swell, they change shape, they bow outward. One way you can demonstrate this to students is to take a balloon, just kind of a sausage-shaped balloon, blow it up, part way, and put a piece of duct tape. And as Mark knows, duct tape is one of my favorite things. So put a piece of duct tape on the inside. And in fact, if you want to make a better demonstration, take two sausage-shaped balloons, put duct tape here and duct tape there, and then tie them together. Or tie them together at the top, leave a little, at the bottom you can blow air into them. And as you stretch, they'll bend more on the outside, so the inside curves open. So you can make those balloons open up. Well, the extra osmotic pressure causes the cells to swell, but they swell unequally because of this unequal thickening of the wall. The stomata opens up. Okay. Now, who gets the glory for that? Okay, is that a result of random chaotic motion? Well, no. It certainly used random chaotic motion. This is another example of osmosis, of water molecules diffusing from a high concentration to a low concentration at a definite rate in a definite direction to a definite endpoint. And yet it accomplishes something absolutely marvelous. But it wouldn't work, for instance, if the other epidermal cells also had chloroplasts. They would swell up and they'd push the guard cell closed. And so you have to design a genetic system that instructs the plant to make leaves where only the guard cells have chloroplasts. Now that's more than one gene it would take to specify that information. And then you have to say, by the way, I want you to make cells that have a thicker wall where they touch than where they don't touch. That takes a lot of genetic information. And that's just awesome, And by the way, there are no, land plants, no plants that, live in the air that don't have these. And so anything that requires this, they've all got them. And the ones you find in the fossils and the very first plants buried in the flood, what the evolutionists would say the first plants ever to evolve, have all this. All of these things are the same in the first, quote, simple land plants as there are in the most advanced plants they have today. Right there from the beginning, created, right from the word go. And so now what happens in the evening? Well, in the evening, okay, the photosynthesis dies down. So the carbon dioxide is not used, it builds up, allows the cell to become more acid, which takes that enzyme that was unfolded, crinkles it up, quits breaking down sugar. Another enzyme puts the sugar back together to form starch. The osmotic pressure is reduced. The snap of the cell walls draws them back together again, and they close. Wow. So tomorrow, okay, some of you have blades of grass showing already. And if you do, you see sun shining on a blade of grass. This is happening millions of times over in the average leaf or blade of grass. Wow! Each one opening its mouth in praise to its creator as the sun comes up. And the design, what do evolutionists say about this? Absolutely nothing. I've never heard or read or even heard anybody talk about saying anything about where they all describe them, they all list them, they all show pictures of them, in fossil plants and modern plants. Yeah, and I've had a lot of evolution. I think most of you know. I used to be a very, very enthusiastic, evolutionist. Dr. Gish used to say I knew more evolution than any evolutionist debater he'd ever faced. And I never heard anything about this. By the way, what do evolutionists say about how plants get watered at the top of the redwoods? They just give you the numbers, say nothing about it, miss the whole point. And it's funny, you can read my biology class, and I got a little booklet on this, in a regular class we say the same things. But boy, oh boy, there's so much more to say. And, sometimes, by the way, just as a little political parenthesis, when did science scores begin to plummet in America? America used to be a leader in producing scientists for the world, and scores began to plummet right after,
Prayer out of the school.
What was that?
Prayer out of the school.
Well, it was actually a little before that, but prayer out of the schools didn't help any. But when the Russians beat us into space, the government said, that can't happen. We got to make every American kid a scientist. And so they produced government-sponsored biology textbooks, the BSCS blue, green, and yellow versions. And then, so now they wanted to have a theme. What theme are we going to use? I know, evolution. And that's when they quit teaching evolution in schools and started assuming evolution. No longer brought it up for questions. It wasn't fair to talk about. He assumed evolution was true. And I was just beginning my college teaching career then, if this gives you some clue as to when this happened. And we were gearing up for the hot new students we'd be getting out of these super, high school biology classrooms. 2 years later, we were doing remedial programs, on how to do basic biology. And the score, and you can chart it, it's just recorded. The scores dropped down, Japanese, Chinese, just begin to plummet.